So now we're going to move into an introduction to global inventory management. So we had some definitions that we went through previously. This one hasn't changed any. Just to summarize or reiterate, inventory management, it's a bunch of different things depending on our business model and our position in the supply chain. We might be dealing with raw materials as a manufacturer, certainly work in process, finished goods, spare parts, accessories. It depends on what we're doing. But this is an all-encompassing definition. Could be applied to all types of different inventory. So it's all the activities associated with the valuation, what's our inventory worth, acquisition, how do we acquire inventory, its movement, its physical movement, shipment, location, where do we have warehouses, are they our own warehouses, are they third parties, how do we store those goods, for what periods of time, we eventually hopefully sell them out into a distribution network, and then we might have to recover or dispose of merchandise that had been out in the distribution network and we have to recover from a product recall, or we have to test and repair some equipment. That element of reverse logistics plays a big part in inventory management. And then the second bullet point, our goal, and we said this, when you talk about customer service in an inventory management environment, in general terms, macro terms, we're talking about product availability. When the customer wants it, at the price they're willing to pay, and the quantity they ordered, packaged and configured the way they want it, at the right place, right time, all those rights that you hear about so much in supply chain. So product availability is the end game. So we've seen this slide a couple of times, so no real need to go over it in too much detail. But the point is, as you see in red with the upper bracket there, is that global inventory management is about the integration and synchronization of the supply chain. And depending on what we do as a company, we may be dealing with raw materials, components, sub-assemblies, work in process, finished goods, accessories, on and on, service parts, MRO, etc. So it transcends that whole S&OP ecosystem on the buy side and into the sell side. And if there's one good integrating factor, in addition to logistics activities and S&OP itself, it's inventory management. In our outsourced global environment that so many companies deal in today, it's important to reiterate that even if we're not a manufacturer, somebody somewhere is dealing with raw materials and components and finished goods and all of those things. If we're a manufacturer, we definitely are. But the point is, collaborating, integrating with our third-party contractors, our third-party manufacturers, is so important. Starting with sharing of forecasts, talking about production schedule. What is the production capacity of our third-party contract manufacturer? What are our agreements on placing orders on that third-party manufacturer? And when all those goods are completed, how do we get them out into the distribution system to our customers, collaborating with our customers? Maybe they're sharing their forecast information with us. Even more ideal. So as you can see, raw materials, different types, I should say inventories, different types of inventories, but also transcending the buy side and the sell side of sales and operations planning, and helping to integrate and synchronize the execution of supply chains. So we've seen these slides a couple of different times now, but we just want to reiterate that your business model, your industry, will determine how your supply chains are designed. So we don't need to go into huge detail here. But again, are you a retailer? Have you been a retailer for the last 50 years and just introduced e-commerce? Are you a wholesaler that carries hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of finished products? Are you a manufacturer, what's sometimes called an OEM, original equipment manufacturer? If you're a supplier to the automotive industry, what tier are you on? Are you in the agricultural business? Or are you a marketing and merchandising company? Just reiterating that key point. Also want to reiterate that types of inventories and operating models, whether it's build to stock, build to order, etc., are going to influence especially inventory management. The best example that we can probably talk about right now is, what are the inventory implications between a model where we build to stock We manufacture merchandise based on our forecast and we hope somebody buys it, versus a build-to-order environment where we don't go into production, we don't acquire inventory until we receive an order. I think the answer to that is pretty simple. If you're in a build-to-stock environment, you're going to have much more inventory around and be at greater risk for your inventory to become obsolete. Whereas build-to-order, the timing, you have less time to engage in these activities because you wait till you get an order and then you put things into play. So the downside is you have less time, but the risk of having too much inventory is less. It's a balancing act between the two. It depends on your industry, your strategy, your risk aversion philosophy, a bunch of different things. But just right out of the gate on this slide to illustrate how inventory levels are influenced by a build-to-stock versus a build-to-order environment, I think it's illustrative and important to mention. Some strategic and tactical considerations before we wrap up this module, specific to global inventory management. And we should probably emphasize that point now. We're not just talking about inventory here in the United States. We are always talking about global organizations. So we're making decisions about inventory management in Africa, inventory management in Asia, the subcontinent, Latin America, all over. So that's our frame of reference. This first bullet point takes us back to the graph that we saw that dealt with sales and operations planning, but also manufacturing planning and control at a high level where there were strategic decisions that had to be made, marketing decisions that had to be made, and financial decisions that had to be made. One of the big financial decisions is right here, illustrated in a global inventory management environment, because things like how much money do we have available to finance global inventory? It's not an infinite amount of money we have available to invest in inventories. There are constraints around our access to capital. So the total dollar investment in global inventory, that's probably step number one, certainly in the top three. Bullet point number two, what are our number and type of stock keeping units or part numbers to carry? Stock keeping units, SKUs, are normally affiliated with finished goods, whereas part numbers, and we've mentioned this before, are more associated with raw materials. So for purposes of our conversation, if we mention the acronym SKU, we're talking about finished goods. If we talk about a part number, as we've said, that's more on a raw material side. That being said, how many SKUs are we going to carry? And what type of SKUs or part numbers are we going to carry? And organizations, especially global organizations, can quickly find themselves having SKU creep, as it's sometimes called, because you could have one product that is packed differently in different configurations, maybe one or two feature changes, and it's in essence the same product, but because of those differences, all of a sudden, instead of having one SKU, you have 10. And if that happens for 5,000 products that you carry, your SKU situation could quickly get out of hand. So something that sounds so simple as how many SKUs and what types of SKUs or part numbers we're going to carry sounds simple. It can get out of hand quickly. You need to be thinking about that. Third bullet point, locations and distribution centers, warehouses and or satellite operations. We saw this when we were talking about DRP. That's that distribution network. Where are they? How big? How are those facilities configured? Are they racked for pallets? Is it more of a conveyor situation for e-commerce fulfillment? So many different questions by region and or country. And because we're dealing with dollars here at the end of the day, risk management, policies and procedures. How do we protect our inventory around the globe in different markets when our goods are in our hands and the hands of third parties?